This is Laura Feldman with the Willamette Speaks Oral History Project. Today is July 19th, 2014. The time is 8:35 a.m. I'm here on the Portland sternwheel steamer ship on the Willamette River, and I'm interviewing Loren Feldman. Loren is a longtime resident of Portland. He's been here 46 years. He was born in Los Angeles, California on June 2nd, 1922. He is a retired Union Oil Company worker down, he used to work down in the Rivergate area on the river. So we're going to be talking a little bit about his time here in the military during World War II and working on the river. So, Loren, tell us your story about your experience on the Willamette River.
Well, I first got acquainted with the Willamette River in 1944. I was a newly minted ensign in the United States Naval Reserve, and went from that appointment to Solomons, Maryland, where we formed a crew for a landing craft support being built in Portland. There were 81 of these little vessels built in Portland, and I ended up on number 58. These small vessels did not have names. But we assembled the whole crew in Solomons, Maryland, got on a train and came out to Portland. The crew went to the naval barracks. The officers were bivouacked in private homes, which was very nice for the officers. And the crew was very happy in Portland. They really thought it was a wonderful town, and they still, the ones that are still alive, rave about Portland still today. The idea of this little vessel, though, was to be a landing craft support. We'd go in with the troops and fire rockets ahead of them before they hit the beach to sort of theoretically clean up the beach of enemy or mines or whatever was left over, so our guys could progress ashore. We stood by once very close into shore because we were a shallow draft vessel. We anchored by the stern. If we wanted to go into the beach all the way, we could drop our anchor out and pull ourselves off after we'd beached the vessel. It was not, all it was a gunship, though. Rockets and 3-inch guns, 20-millimeter guns, 40-millimeter guns, could make smoke. We had fire pumps in case we had to fight fire ashore or by grounding the vessel or the bow on, or on other vessels that were in trouble.
How many ships were made here in the Portland Harbor?
81.
Whoa, yeah, you just said that. 81.
Pardon me, 83.
83, my goodness.
52 by Commercial Iron Works and 31 by Albina Engine and Machine Works.
So this was a shipbuilding hub during the war.
Well, it absolutely was. Most people recognize this building troop ships and Liberty ships and Victory ships and things like that. But these little ships were very important. And they were built on the Willamette River, not on the Columbia River. At the foot of Gibbs Street and at the foot of Clark Street on the east side of the river. So it was quite a show, and we really enjoyed our time here. But when we got here, we assembled all the things that we needed on the ship. We assembled in downtown in what is now McCall Waterfront Park. There was an old building down there, was a public market. Well, the Navy took the whole building over and had separate bays set up, so you could assemble everything for your ship in your own bay. And then when your ship was ready, from the yard said it's ready for you to come aboard. But then we'd take all that gear, move it over onto the ship, and get settled in. Then when everything looked right, we would commission the ship. And then, in our case, when my ship was commissioned, we had to go into quarantine for 2 weeks because of polio problem in Portland. But then we went on to San Diego, went off to war.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So did you ever fish or swim in the river while you were here?
Fished. Never had any reason to. Well, never had any reason to swim per se. But I was a member of the Willamette Sailing Club, and we sailed on the Willamette River.
Huh.
And still, I was still a member there. I joined that in 1969 after I moved back to Portland for good in 1968.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you said you fished while you were here working on the river?
Well, I didn't actually work on the river. I had to peddle all this fertilizer that was coming in from Alaska.
Right.
With our Rivergate terminal was where we brought the ammonia in and the urea fertilizers in. And then it was my job to peddle that stuff.
So first you were here during the war, you know, getting the ship ready, you sailed out, and then you came back in the 60s where you worked in the Rivergate area at Union Oil.
We had a terminal there. I didn't work. I worked from home.
Okay.
I told my bosses, I'm not going to go out to that damn out there on the peninsula, and then have to come back to town to see anybody.
But
so I got a office space downtown. And Union Oil Company had, at that point in time, had a major office in Portland. District office at 1776 Madison Avenue. Well, the guy that ran that wanted to charge my department too much money, so I told my boss I'll just get a place.
So, but you have an interesting relationship with the river. You were here in World War II, you know, getting the ship ready.
And then sailing on it once I got to Portland for good.
Yes, and then sailing on it. I think that's interesting. And then working on it to a degree, not exactly on it, but with Union Oil, the river was certainly part of your
transportation was a big part of handling of a commodity.
Yes.
Fertilizer is a commodity, and so you can buy it from anybody. It's the same stuff. It's all made to certain specs. So if you want to have business, you have to make sure that the product gets to your customer on time, at the right way, by truck or by rail.
And this river was an important part of moving that commodity.
Because we took a lot of that fertilizer that came in here went up the river to Pasco, where we had another terminal.
And then you joined the sailing club, so that was a more intimate
I've been in the sailing club in Sacramento, so then when I moved up here, I brought my own boat with me and joined that club.
Where would you sail along the river? From where to where typically?
Down by Willamette Park. That's where the club is. It's still there.
You sail to?
You just sail in the river. Now, but then we sailed on weeknights, so that weekends we could go to different ports, different places where they were holding regattas.
On the Willamette?
No,
other rivers.
Other places in
so you
Oregon
practiced,
or Washington.
Yeah, you practiced on the river.
Yeah.
Great. So now you're retired. You're 92, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations. And you are a big part of the Oregon Maritime Museum.
Well, I've been on the ship since 1989, when we got it as a wreck at Terminal 1 and started to bring it back to life, and which is still an ongoing job. Ships don't just take care of themselves. But once you finish painting it, you have to go back and start painting again. I mean, things.
So you're back. You're still on the river. Your life has somewhat, been.
Well, I enjoy it.
Yeah. Connected to this river.
But at my age, I'm not agile enough to sail small boats anymore.
Right. So what do you do here now? Do you help plan things or maintenance?
And making things happen that people didn't know why is this way or that way. But I know from being on the ship since 1989, some of the reasons that things are the way they are.
Do you go on the trips? Do you sail with them?
Sometimes. I have a habit of wanting to be in the wheelhouse all the time, because that was my job on my ship.
You were you steered
so I was
the ship.
executive. I was number 2 guy on the ship. Executive officer and navigator. So for my LCS, little gunboat. There were 71 guys in that little vessel. It was 156 feet long and 23 feet wide.
Wow.
But it took that many men to fight the ship. If you're going to fight it, that's what you need. You need that. You didn't need that many people to get from here to San Francisco.
Right.
But if you're going to fight the ship, man all the guns,
right,
and the rockets and the radar and the radio and all that that stuff. And the engine room, of course.
Uh-huh.
It took 71 people.
Wow.
6 officers and 65 men.
My goodness. You've logged a lot of river time, ocean time. You're a water person, I dare say.
Well, I enjoy it. I grew up in Southern California and used to get in swimming. My mother would pull me out when I started to turn blue.
Wow. Wonderful. I wanted to ask you a little bit, we talked a little bit about the Superfund cleanup, and you said you were aware of it, but weren't quite current with it, and you were talking about some of the things that you've seen on the river over the years that were problems. I think you mentioned the...
Well, they're recognized as problems now. In the old days, if you had a pole yard, you treated all the poles, but the creosote or whatever you were using soaked into the soil. So that's down by St. John's Bridge. That was a big pole yard. And then up at the Dalles, there's the pole yard.
And there just wasn't an awareness.
But people didn't even think about things like that in the old days.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for this cleanup? Any ideas about what they could do or do better or anything? I think part of the challenge is that we all need to participate with our particular wisdom and our ideas about how that river can be cleaned up. And I wonder what your thoughts might be.
There's lots of ways to clean up the river, and part of it is to just cover up stuff.
Yeah.
And that is one factor that is being studied for certain situations. Instead of trying to dig up everything and put it someplace else to contaminate another area, leave it where it is and put a lid on it of clean stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly one of the...
Well, if you're dredging, you call them spoils. That's what you dredge up. So what you dredged up is called spoils. And you can put the clean spoils to cover the bad areas. That's one approach.
Yeah, they call it capping, I think. Capping?
No, that's capping is one term that is used.
Yeah, I think that is, cap and dredge is pretty much what I think they do. Or nothing. That's the other thing they do, is they just leave it for natural.
A lot of these things aren't as dangerous as the Superfund makes them out. I mean, because time has been on our side. But there are certain, what we're really worried about is the food chain.
Yeah.
Mercury and stuff like that getting into fish and getting into bigger fish, and then you eat the fish, and then you got mercury in you and that kind of stuff. So that's what we're trying to reduce. That's the hazard we're trying to reduce.
Right. Yes. Well,
plain old oil isn't as bad as mercury as far as human life is concerned.
Yeah, there are a lot of different factors in this process. The big float is coming up this month. Have you heard about that, where people get in inner tubes and they jump in the river? And
well, the river's clean enough now they can.
Are you going to be...
When I first came to Portland, of course, you had to take a shot, a typhoid shot, before you could sail as a sailing club.
Really?
Yeah.
That was in 1960...
68 when I came.
Interesting.
The sailing club had a couple of doctors that were members, sailing members. They go and inoculate every new guy
Wow.
for typhoid, because the river was that dirty. Then McCall comes along and things like that, and things got cleaned up pretty well. And now with the big pipes on both sides of the river, we're not dumping as much sewage into the river during storm times. When the old sewer system couldn't handle the volume, so they dumped it in the river. But now we don't have to dump as much into the river. Maybe one spot or two are still left, but not much.
How do you see this? How do you see it moving forward as a working harbor, but a cleaner river as well? How do you see the two happening together? A cleaner river, and yet it's still a working harbor. I wonder how that can happen without the pollution.
Well, you don't have to pollute. In fact, nowadays, when ships come within 200 miles of the United States, they have to change to clean diesel. They aren't allowed to use their dirty fuel. And when they pull into, say, Los Angeles, they turn off their generators, which put diesel smoke out, to generate electricity for the ship. They just take the ship and they plug it into shore power in Los Angeles harbor.
Yeah.
You know, that costs some money, but
Right,
still,
it's cleaner.
It's cleaner, and that's the rule. So certain harbors are way ahead of other harbors in
Yes.
attacking the situation.
Yeah.
And Los Angeles, of course, was a smoky city when the Indians had it. Before Spanish or anyone else got here, it was a smoky city because of the terrain. So smog is very common in Los Angeles, and will always be.
Well, this has been a wonderful look at your relationship with the river, your long-term relationship with the river. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we end this interview?
I don't think so, not at this moment.
Okay. Hopefully we can come back and hear some more stories.
Well, we'll find something that's pretty interesting and
Oh, yeah.
we can delve into, yes.
Oh, sure. So this is Laura Feldman. We're ending this interview at 8:52 with Loren Hillman. Thank you, Loren.